Good morning, everyone. My name is Adam Livingston, and I am the Bitcoin Wizard. So nice to be with you here again today because I have a mind-blowing one for you. I have biological proof that Bitcoiners are the new financial elite, and yes, that means that you are gonna be rich. You know, everyone in finance likes to talk like they're smart. They talk about alpha, beta, Sharpe ratios, yield curves, whatever, but none of them have ever asked the question that actually matters. What if getting rich wasn't just about IQ, luck, or timing? What if it was biological? Today I'm going to show you something that Wall Street does not teach and your econ professor wouldn't even understand. I'm going to give you biological proof, actual evolutionary evidence that Bitcoiners are genetically wired to outlast and outperform every fiat junkie on Earth. Yeah, that sounds insane, but hang with me because if you've ever wondered why you can delay gratification, save instead of spend, and plan for decades, while everyone else out there melts their paycheck into DoorDash and dopamine hits, there's a reason for that. This will fundamentally change how you understand Bitcoin and, on a more broader level, understand reality. You're part of a different species of investor, a new branch of financial evolution, and I can prove it. This is not just about money. It's about time preference. It's about discipline. It's about who survives the coming monetary extinction and who doesn't. By the end of this, you're going to understand exactly why Bitcoiners will inherit a disproportionate share of the planet's wealth, and it's not a conspiracy theory, it's biology. And I just gotta say, I gotta thank Horizon, my sponsor. These guys are amazing. Thank you so much. If you guys didn't know, Horizon helps you buy Bitcoin using your home equity without debt, monthly payments, or term limits. The Bitcoin is fully yours to custody how you'd like with no risk of forced liquidation. They're linked in the video description. I'll talk more about them at the end of the video. All right, kids, we're going to zoom out from the financial charts for a second. Every organism on Earth, from bacteria to billionaires, faces the same fundamental question. Do I want quantity or do I want quality? Do I want to spray and pray or do I want to plan and build? This applies to dating, to parenting, and apparently central banking. See, in nature, there are two main survival strategies. The first one is called R-selection. That is the go fast and die young approach. Think rabbits, think mosquitoes, and frankly, people who lease a BMW at 29% APR. R-selected folks reproduce fast, they don't save, and when their environment collapses, they're shocked that their OnlyFans portfolio didn't hold up. Then we have K-selection strategy, the slow, methodical, deliberate approach. These are your elephants, your whales, your Bitcoiners. They don't waste energy. They don't chase every shiny object. They think in generations. They build legacy, not leverage. This trade-off between quantity and quality doesn't just explain nature. It explains economics. It explains why fiat breeds consumers and Bitcoin breeds savers. It explains why half of the world is scrambling for dopamine while the other half is quietly buying more sats. So when the environment gets unstable, when money itself starts to mutate, the R-selected go extinct. They panic, they sell, they print, but the K-selected, they thrive, they adapt, and they survive the cycle. And spoiler alert, we're the K-selected ones. Welcome to Fiat Zoo Exhibit A, the R-selected species. These are the fast-breeding, short-sighted creatures that dominate in unstable, chaotic environments like the modern economy. R stands for intrinsic rate of growth, which is just a fancy academic way of saying panic, reproduce, and consume before the collapse hits. In biology, these are the creatures that thrive when nothing makes sense, when the interest rates swing, when currencies devalue, and when governments promise to fix it with another stimulus check. They live in a world so unpredictable, their only strategy is to go fast, spend faster, and pray later. Our strategy is very simple. Make as many copies of yourself as you can before the lights go out. In nature, that means mosquitoes. In economics, that means influencers selling trading courses and people buying 6 NFTs of a cartoon frog at 3 a.m. Our selected species do not build anything that lasts. They just explode exploit the temporary chaos. Every cycle, they come in roaring with margin accounts, leverage, and caffeine, and every cycle, they vanish when the Fed sneezes. Let's look at their traits, shall we? Early maturity. They ape into markets the second they hit 18. Short lifespan, both biologically and financially. There's little to no parental care. Their mentors are Reddit threads. They have high reproductive output. Every mistake gets cloned and uploaded to TikTok as financial advice. And they have a very high mortality rate among their offspring. One market crash and they're gone. New username, new identity, same habits. Nature calls this selection pressure, but Wall Street calls it liquidation. These are the species that dominate in the fiat ecosystem, where inflation punishes savers and rewards speed. They multiply during money printing. They thrive on FOMO, and when the tide goes out, their entire genetic line gets wiped off the blockchain. So if you ever wondered why your coworker just bought a meme coin because a YouTuber said it's the next Bitcoin, congratulations, you have witnessed an R-selected organism in the wild. And here's the thing, evolution, as we all know, is very cruel. It doesn't reward the loud, it rewards the fit. And when that environment stabilizes, when the monetary habitat hardens, these fast and furious creatures get selected out. Which brings us to the opposite end of the spectrum, the K-selected species, the ones who survive, the ones who build, the Bitcoiners. This is the opposite end of the evolution spectrum, the apex strategy, the K-selected species. These are not the TikTok traders. These are the architects, the builders, the people who buy Bitcoin. In biology, K stands for carrying capacity, the maximum sustainable population an environment can support. In finance, it's basically the line between people who plan for decades and people who panic when their DoorDash tip gets declined. These species, the elephants, the whales, the long-lived humans, they don't rush, we don't chase noise, they invest deeply into survival, into efficiency, into the long game. That is not weakness, that is strategy. They produce fewer offspring, but each one matters more because they pour more energy, resources, and time into them. And that's exactly what Bitcoiners do. We don't YOLO into every pump. We build conviction. We hold, we educate, and we secure the next generation. Every sat is a seed, and every seed is protected like bloodline. You ever notice how normies mock Bitcoiners for being obsessed? Yeah, elephants also get mocked by mosquitoes for being slow. We just look at the key traits and we can prove this to be reality. Late maturity, check. Bitcoiners usually find the truth after they've been burned by the system. Long lifespan, check. We think in halving cycles, not news cycles. Extensive parental care, absolutely. Bitcoiners raise kids to understand time, not TikTok. Low productive rate, fair. We're too busy stacking sats. But for those offspring, they survive. They inherit sound money, sound values, and probably your old neighbor's house when the mortgage resets. In nature, it's elephants, it's whales, it's eagles, but in money, it's the Bitcoiners, the species that refuse to rush, that invest in quality, that protect when they build, and they dominate when the chaos ends. Remember, evolution is not about who moves fastest, it is about who survives the longest. And in a world drowning in fiat volatility, the K-selected Bitcoiner is the last one standing. They're not chasing wealth, they're becoming wealth. So here's where things get really interesting because nature, just like markets, doesn't deal in absolutes. There is no perfect R species, there is no perfect K species. Everything lives on this continuum of survival. This right here is the evolutionary spectrum from the chaotic and impulsive to the strategic and enduring. On the left, you've got rabbits, the hyperactive, short-term, full of enthusiasm and zero planning. And on the right, you've got the elephants, the patient, deliberate, operating on 100-year time horizons. And in between, that is where most humans live, flip-flopping back and forth depending on how broken their environment is. When life is stable, people become K-selected. They save, they build, and they cooperate. But when life turns unstable, when inflation spikes, when rent eats your paycheck, when your currency melts faster than your iced latte, people regress. They become R-selected. They start living like rabbits again, fast, frantic, reproducing bad decisions. So if that sounds familiar, well, that's basically the history of fiat currency. This continuum is not just biological, it is behavioral economics in disguise. Because money itself creates the environment, fiat systems breed instability, a perfect petri dish for our selected behavior: short-term thinking, consumer addiction, no savings, and zero foresight. But Bitcoin, on the case-selected side, remember, Bitcoin stabilizes your environment: fixed supply, predictable issuance, transparent rules. It rewards patience, discipline, and long-term focus, which is case-selected behavior. So yes, humans are adaptable. We can shift along this continuum, but the money you use decides which version of yourself survives. Fiat pushes you left, Bitcoin pulls you right. Fiat makes you frantic, Bitcoin makes you feel focused. Fiat breeds panic, Bitcoin breeds patience. In a world where everyone is sprinting toward extinction, Bitcoiners are calmly walking toward generational dominance. Evolution has spoken. The rabbits can keep their NFTs. The elephants are buying land. All right, let's talk about the world that most people still live in, the R-selected fiat ecosystem. This is the realm of high time preference where everyone wants everything now. Think gratification, think credit and clout. They want it instantly or bust. We're living in a global psychological experiment where everyone is a lab rat with an iPhone and a Chase credit card. And yes, I know you guys all feel that. This is reality. Now, the environment here is unstable design because there is monetary debasement, there are credit cycles, there are bubbles, there are bailouts. The ground is always shifting beneath your feet. It's like you're living on a treadmill going 10 built by Jerome Powell. And yet the people sprint. They sprint because they think that they're getting ahead, when in reality, they're just generating frictional heat for the next CPI report. The strategy is to reproduce fast, but not necessarily biologically, financially. Spin up as many dopamine offspring as possible before the next collapse. New car, new phone, new subscription, new personality. Extract value before it evaporates. That is their mindset. In fiat culture, the half-life of satisfaction is shorter than the attention span of someone on Instagram. Here's what defines them. They spend instead of save. They have debt instead of discipline. They have speculation instead of sovereignty, and dependence instead of independence. They have outsourced their survival to the institutions, the banks, the governments, the corporate overlords, and those three institutions are basically economic zookeepers. Fiat consumers aren't free-range humans. They're domesticated house pets of the monetary system. The fiat consumer is the fruit fly of civilization. Lots of noise and little legacy. Now that line hits because it's just true. I'm sorry, don't mean to offend anybody, but they swarm around whatever is trending. They live fast, they burn bright, and then they disappear, leaving nothing but receipts and regret. Here's the thing, the R-selected behavior actually makes sense in a decaying system, because when your environment punishes patience, chaos becomes strategy. You extract very short-term advantage because the long-term no longer exists. That's why the average fiat citizen doesn't plan for retirement, they're just planning to survive the next rate hike. So yes, they look crazy, but in their world, that's adaptive. The system is unstable and selects for the frantic, the impulsive, the easily manipulated. Fiat rewards the R-selected until it doesn't. Then it eats them alive. And when the collapse finally hits, the K-selected are waiting. They're calm. They're prepared. They're holding the hardest money in human history. What comes next? The Bitcoin world. That's evolution. See, we just talked about the fiat world being chaos, constantly shifting ground, but Bitcoin is the first stable environment humanity has had in 100 years. The monetary bedrock is solid. The rules never change. It's like gravity, but for wealth. When you build on sand, you get Vegas. When you build on stone, you get civilization. So, what happens in a stable environment? Nature selects for patience, delay gratification, accumulate capital, protect offspring, whether that's time, wealth, or knowledge. This is what low time preference looks like in practice: saving and investing over decades, not quarters, building families, companies, institutions rooted in integrity, prioritizing education, energy efficiency, and security instead of meaningless status games. The fiat people will argue over their truck payments while Bitcoiners are quietly cornering the future of civilization. Bitcoiners think in multi-generational terms. They understand that compounding time beats compounding credit. They don't spend their lives trying to look rich, they spend them becoming sovereign. Bitcoiners are the apex K strategists in a world reverting to sound money. They conserve energy, they build strong networks, they compound wealth instead of dissipating it. They're not just winning, they are out-evolving. When fiat consumers scroll themselves into extinction, Bitcoiners are quietly repopulating the future with competence. The K-selected Bitcoiners don't react to chaos, we wait for it. Because when the old world burns, it is not a crisis, it is an inheritance. When fiat collapses, and it won't be random, it will literally be biological. Because just like unstable ecosystems wipe out our selected species, unstable economies wipe out fiat consumers. The laws of nature don't care about your portfolio, they care about your fitness, and in this ecosystem, only the K-selected survive. Here we have our modern fiat R strategist, the modern Homo credit cardist. Maxed out on debt, they're emotionally volatile, completely dependent on external stimulus. They live in their permanent Netflix dopamine loop. Their survival strategy is literally hope the money printer keeps going burr. But when the interest rates rise or the printer slows, they get crushed. They panic, they liquidate, they start Googling how to short groceries. The fiat R strategists are not building wealth ever, they're beta testing extinction. And when you have the Bitcoin K strategist who is calm, composed, and anti-fragile, they are holding scarce capital. They're not chasing volatility, they are absorbing the volatility. They have trained their nervous system for long-term thinking, they have mastered discipline, foresight, and time preference. Their assets compound faster than inflation because they understand something deeper on a more primal, visceral level, that money is not just a tool, money is a test. Nature clearly rewards those who can delay gratification, conserve energy, and think generationally. Just look up the marshmallow experiment, okay? Bitcoin does the same. It selects for patience, it rewards foresight, it filters the impulsive. Fiat rewards consumption, Bitcoin rewards comprehension. Fiat rewards the loud, Bitcoin rewards the patient. Fiat rewards dependence, but Bitcoin rewards discipline. And when the collapse comes, because entropy does always win, the fiat world will go extinct, screaming for stimulus, while the Bitcoiners will sit quietly, holding the hardest asset ever created, watching the rest unfold with generational calm. Just as nature selects for long-term fitness in stable environments, Bitcoin's monetary ecosystem selects for stewardship of time, for patience, for foresight, for builders. In the end, it won't be the rich who inherit the earth, it will be the time rich, and that's us, the Bitcoiners. In the Bitcoin era, time preference itself becomes a survival trait. We're not just talking about money anymore, kids. We're talking about the ability to resist chaos, delay gratification, and think beyond the next quarter or the next election. We all know that in fiat systems, the loudest survive, but in Bitcoin, the most patient do. In our everyday life, everything is just screaming for our attention. Everyone is sprinting for scraps. They mistake noise for progress, motion for meaning, and consumption for creation. But in nature, that strategy always ends the same way: extinction. Then comes the transition from the fiat zoo, the monetary collapse, the evolutionary bottleneck, if you will. This is where the R strategists vanish, the over-leveraged, overstimulated, overconfident, all selected out by the same force that they ignored: reality. It is brutal, yes, but it's how nature resets the scoreboard. Finally, we reach the Bitcoin forest, which is quiet, which is stable, which is predictable. The weak have burned out and the patient remain. In this ecosystem, survival belongs to those who can think in epochs instead of moments. Those who plant capital like seeds, not to flip, but to harvest decades later. In this new equilibrium, wealth stops being a measure of luck and starts being a measure of time and discipline. Bitcoin doesn't just reward intelligence, it rewards restraint. This is the monetary natural selection. The fiat zoo collapses, the time preferred ascend, and those who mastered patience, those who learn to store their finite energy in truth, inherit the future, because in the end, the ultimate asset isn't Bitcoin, It is time, and Bitcoiners are the only ones who stopped wasting it. When the noise of fiat finally collapses, when the last influencer coin rug pulls its way into oblivion, only those who saved time will remain. The K-selected Bitcoiners, the patient, the disciplined, the anti-fragile few who didn't chase dopamine, they stored time itself. 21 million fixed supply, that's it. Absolute scarcity, the most stable environment ever created for intelligent life. The other system inflates, but this one adapts. This is the habitat evolution that we have been waiting for. It is not just money, kids. It's ecological perfection, a closed-loop energy economy where nothing leaks, nothing dies, it just compounds. We have an infinity time horizon because we don't think in quarters or cycles, we think in epochs. That is the true evolutionary advantage. Perspective, because every generation before us optimized for comfort, we optimize for continuity. They don't ask, what's my ROI this year? They ask, how do I protect human civilization for the next 1,000 years? That's not idealism, that's genetic memory. One winning strategy, low time preference, that's it, the trait that separates extinction from endurance. When the fiat zoo finally collapses, the loudest will vanish first. They'll be fighting over crumbs of credit, while the Bitcoiners, the K-selected few, will quietly own all of the productive capital, the energy, the land, and the code. While everyone else is rebooting their OnlyFans to pay their rent, Bitcoiners will be rebooting civilization. Once the dust settles, the power returns to those who stored time, and in that new world, metrics change. Wealth becomes patience, capital becomes clarity, and survival belongs to the most patient of us all. In the fiat zoo, survival begins to the loudest, but in the Bitcoin forest, survival belongs to the most patient, and that is evolution. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Adam Livingston. I am the Bitcoin Wizard. If you like this content, please like this video and subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends and family. I need your help in spreading the orange gospel to the masses. Have a terrific day. Do not party too hard. Class dismissed. Once again, a special thanks to Horizon for sponsoring this video. Most people don't realize this, but on average, 60% of American homeowners' net worth is locked up in their primary residence. And with home prices more inflated than ever, Americans now sit on a combined $35 trillion in home equity. Now there's a way to unlock that trapped capital and put it to work in Bitcoin. Horizon helps homeowners unlock a portion of their home equity to buy Bitcoin. It is not a loan, so there are no new monthly payments. You keep living in your home as usual. Later, when you sell, refinance, or choose to settle early, Horizon's provider takes an agreed share of your home's future value. That is the trade. Unlock cash now to stack Bitcoin by selling a slice of your home's future value while you continue living in it. What makes Horizon stand out is that there are no term limits and you keep 100% of the Bitcoin upside. The Bitcoin is fully yours to custody however you want, wherever you want, with no risk of forced liquidation. If you've been sitting on a pile of home equity and are eager to invest in Bitcoin, this may be the product for you. Visit joinhorizon.com to see if you qualify and get started. Their team of experts will work with you one-on-one from start to finish. Transform your dormant home equity into Bitcoin today with Horizon.